Hi there, welcome to Boxing Deep Dive. I'm Lyndon Hosking, and this is Dream Fights, and this is where we match two greats from the past or present against each other and discuss and debate who we think wins and why. So I'm joined, as always, by, well, not always, but four guests, Tassie Brown, Peter Maniatis and Mike Altamura. Big welcome back to you, Mike. We've missed you the last couple of weeks, and you've picked a great one to be back for. So welcome. So, how you been feeling, Mike? You're all good to go? We need you at full strength for this one.
I'm excited about this one tonight. I think that this is going to cause some heated debates.
Yeah, well, before we get to that, let's go to... well, first of all, Pete, we had a couple of weeks ago, we had the Costa Zoo Manny Pacquiao dream fight. Mike was away for that one. Mike, we have to get your tip for that one. Who do you think would have won and why?
I can see Taz already acting disinterested because he knows that I would.
I got a phone call. Richard Schaefer's calling me. Richard Schaefer, problemo.
Everyone talks about Zoo being a great exponent against lefties, but the one thing that could give Zoo a lot of trouble was guys that could move and guys with fast feet. And I said it when we talked about De La Hoya and Zoo, and I'll say it again with Pacquiao and Zoo. I think one's a great fighter, a Hall of Famer, but the other one's a generational talent. And I think that Manny Pacquiao would have found the way to beat Costa.
Yeah, well,
he would have found a way to jump on like Marquez's right hand. Leaps onto it.
Well said, Mike. Well, the people out there in Instagram land, they agreed because 57% went for Pacquiao. So, but not us, Tassie. We stood firm.
A lot of Filipinos, mate. A lot of Filipinos.
All right, well, before we get to this week's one, let's check last week's poll. It was Julio Cesar Chavez and Alexis Arguello. I've got to say there wasn't a hell of a lot of interest in this one online. We only had about a dozen or so voters, but 100%...
You know why, Lyndon?
What's that, mate? Have we lost Tassie there? I think we might have lost everyone there, have we? How are we going there, guys? We're back?
I still got you.
Oh, yeah. All good. Sorry, I lost you there. Sorry, what were you going to say, Tassie?
The reason people don't have much interest about it, most people don't know shit about boxing, that's why.
I thought it was a great pick. I thought it was a really good pick. But, is Mike gone again? I don't know.
Yeah, Richard Schaefer's calling him again.
Richard Schaefer, all right. Well, here he comes back now, I think. Yeah, he's back. All right, well, let's get into it before we all start dropping out. We're having all sorts of gremlins tonight. So... my pick tonight, I'm really excited about getting into it. Let's check it out. And it is an all-Aussie affair. It is Jeff Fenech, the one and only Marrickville Mauler, up against the Master Blaster, Lester Ellis. So, guys, I think, look, on paper or just by looking at the records, you'd probably pick Jeff pretty comfortably. But I've got to tell you, it wasn't as easy as what it looked. What do you reckon, Tassie? Just as we look at Jeff's record as we go there. Go ahead.
Look, I mean, this is a dream fight because this fight's was talked about many times back in the day and it didn't happen. I mean, when I think of prime Fenech, I think bantamweight, sort of super bantam feather, but you got to remember, he did fight and, in my opinion, beat Zuma Nelson, one of the greatest Hall of Famers, greatest African fighter that ever lived. So that was a super feather. Now, Lester Ellis' super feather was a beast, was an animal. So, but we'll get back to the pick later. But I mean, Jeff, obviously, was just such a strong fighter. He ragdolled most of his opponents. He could box a bit as well when he wanted to get on the back foot with the jab, but he had such strength for a bantamweight and a super bantam and feather. And his work rate was unmatched. He threw that many punches, he hit you anywhere, on the hip, on the elbows, anywhere. He's just so relentless. And if Jeff would have had not bad hands, it could have even been better than what he was. I mean, he was just a freak. Such a big heart. He was always there. He'd never give in. And a legend, one of the greatest fighters to ever lace up gloves. He's a Hall of Famer himself, first ballot Hall of Famer. And he used to beat Mexicans by using a Mexican style. He beat the Mexicans with their own style, a Mexican.
Yeah, no, exactly. Pete, like we obviously had Jeff a couple of weeks ago with I think it was Mike's pick against Barry McGuigan, so we're backing up pretty quickly. But Barry McGuigan, probably went on the bigger and better things than what Leicester did. But geez, I think just myself, Leicester gives Jeff a 10 times harder fight than what Barry McGuigan would. I don't want to upset Mike there, but what do you think?
Yeah, look, I mean, Leicester, let's just say we're talking Leicester that was 19, 20 years of age, pre-Barry Michael. I mean, he had blistering hand speed, he had great body shots, good movement, and he was, tough as nails. So Jeff would have came forward. It would have been a great match. It would have been very competitive, I feel. And it would have, I think it would have been brilliant because Leicester was, obviously Jeff started at bantamweight and this would have been right up at junior lightweight. So the bullying and stuff would Fenech have been able to bully Leicester? That's the next thing you ask, because Leicester was a lot bigger. And Leicester did have a bit of kick in his punches to keep Jeff honest as well. So it's not a mismatch that we think it would be, because Leicester would be a live opponent. Leicester would be a live opponent.
Mike, like Pete just said, we probably should have said at the start, it's a little bit hard to match these guys up technically because, Leicester at his best arguably was in 85 when he was world champion, but he was only 19 or 20 years of age then, where Jeff hit junior lightweight in his probably late or mid to late 20s. So a little bit hard that way, but do you agree with Pete, or not agree with Pete about the bullying factor? Do you think that Jeff would have been able to bully Leicester? Because he was a pretty aggro kid when he was younger, wasn't he, Leicester?
But I'll just say this as well, that they weren't that far off at one point. So basically, Fenech got stopped by Calvin Grove, and the next fight, Leicester fought Grove at 135. So they weren't that far off in weight at that stage. And that was Jeff, post-fight, the rematch with the Zuma Nelson. So, yeah, post-prime Fenech, but still, they were thereabouts. But, yeah, look, make no bones about it. Leicester could be outskilled. No one outmauled him his whole career. Barry Michael outskilled and outcrafted him. If you want to meet him head on, I would back Lester Ellis against anybody. And the thing is, you'd back Jeff Fenech against anybody too in that same territory. So what's going to happen when two bulls collide? Leicester had, like Pete said, blistering hand speed, real fast combinations, good jab, but at heart, he was a fighter. You go watch your fight 5-6 times, slinging guys to the canvas, punching them when they were down, crouching them over with the body, when their knees touching the canvas, hitting them 2-3 times again. And Jeff was very similar. So stylistically, you have to imagine this is going to be a fight of the year contender. Either somebody's going to be getting knocked out or they're going to be knocking every shade out of one another for 12, 15 rounds, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it, Tassie? Because we saw we did the Lester Ellis Barry Michael fight. It was last week or the week before, and what a great fight that was. Do you see this as a similar type of fight? I mean, I don't think Jeff is probably as defensively minded, or not probably defensively minded, but as good a defence as what Barry Michael had. But he would probably charge in the same way. Do you think Lester would have a bit more success with Jeff than he did against Barry?
Look, like Mike said, I mean, this fight is it could have been the best fight we ever witnessed because they're both fighters, like Mike said. They're both bulls. They're both a bit dirty. They'll do whatever wins. They just had big hearts. They'll do anything to win. So, I mean, when that happens, two trucks are just going to collide. I mean, look, Jeff's not going to bully Leicester because Leicester's, that's strong at that weight as well. Obviously, too, I mean, it depends when they fought. I mean, later on, Jeff done a bit with Emmanuel Stewart. I think he learnt more there, more of the boxing from Emmanuel that he did with Johnny. But Johnny obviously was the, such a great motivator and, great on the corner. Knew Jeff at the relationship since they were kids. So depends who's in the corner as well on the night. But Leicester, mate, make no mistake, a vicious body puncher, fast hands, could bang enough to keep you honest. But yeah, look, it's hard to back against Jeff. But I mean, as I said, it's just could have been the best fight we never had. I mean, Barry and Lester was good, but this one would have been better. I really believe it.
Oh no, I agree, Pete. What do you think would have been? If you talk about the Sydney versus Melbourne factor as well, do you reckon that would actually give the fight even more spice? Because Jeff was obviously a hero to Australia, but more so in Sydney, whereas Lester was the golden boy of Melbourne boxing, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was. It would have been classic Sydney versus Melbourne contest. And look, Jeff Fenech is our greatest Australian boxer. So if you're going just on form, you'll be going, look, it's a no-brainer. But matchups don't work that way, and styles make fights. So this would have been very interesting because Les had that explosive power, and he had it pretty early as well. I mean, he was dangerous early. He could take you out pretty quick as well if he saw half an opportunity. So Jeff wouldn't be able to mule him and be unresponsible and try and walk through him. He'd have to give Les the respect because there would be bombs coming his way.
And you look at this fight in particular here, Mike, against Azuma and Ellis, and you could never see Lester just laying on the ropes and letting Jeff pretty much lay on top of him and throw those punches. He'd be pivoting around, he'd be twisting. He did it against Barry a couple of times, so it'd be really intriguing in those early rounds what sort of fireworks we'd get. Oh, hang on, we've lost Mike. You muted yourself there, mate.
Yeah, we could see. Yeah. Look, Jeff was a natural born killer. There's no doubt about that. So if he smelled a weakness as well, he'd make a little 1 millimetre hole in or a gigantic hole. He'd just go right through you, and that was his strongest forte. If you found any type of weakness, Jeff would capitalise very quickly. So, I mean, giving it all into account, it's still a great matchup style-wise because I'd love to see the first 3 or 4 rounds of this fight and how it pans out.
Mike, before we get on to Lester, sorry, the question I just asked then about whether you think Lester would just lie on the ropes and let Jeff push him around like even greats like Azuma and Ellis did.
No, I think that stylistically, Fenech would have to make some adjustments. I think that a lot of that mauling work where he's throwing inside and reaching a little bit, you see leaning over his knee, things like that.
Yep.
It'd make him a sucker to the counter hook from Lester. I think that, but the thing is, Fenech was very adept at adapting too. I think that Jeff would know that he couldn't stand there too long, but Jeff was very good at knowing which guys he had to stay right on their chest and which guys he could stay a little bit at range. So I think with Lester, Jeff would be working frenetically to get all the inside, hold him one side and try and nullify him that way.
Let's, before we get on to Lester and let Tassie have a say, sorry, we'll go through Jeff's record here, 29-3-1, 28 KOs. Put the Australian flyweight title in there. I'm not sure that'll be on his high list of achievements and on his mantelpiece at home, but won that in 1984. Of course, the ones that matter, IBF Bantamweight Champion, 85, WBC Super Bantamweight Champion, 87, WBC Featherweight Champion in 88, and in the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 2002. Let's have a look at his opponent. We've just spoken obviously about him. The one and only Master Blaster, Lester Ellis, 41-8, 28 KOs. You see there he won the Commonwealth title in 84, Super Featherweight, then won the IBF Junior Lightweight Champion, also won the Commonwealth Super Lightweight Championship. I've put in the IBO titles there, probably not obviously as esteemed as the others, but still achievements all the same. Tassie, Lester, just back in his day, just deadly to that hook to the head and body, wasn't he? And it's something that Jeff would have to look out for.
Yeah, he was, mate. And Jeff Fenech's record was wrong, mate. The knockouts, he had 29 wins, 21 knockouts.
What did I have? 25 knockouts, did I?
28.
Oh, sorry. Okay, my mistake.
Yeah.
Thanks for correcting that.
That's all right.
I didn't even notice that, Tassie.
No, I must have missed that.
You better not be as sharp as that quiz next week or on Thursday.
I knew that he didn't knock out 28 out of 29 opponents. That's just common sense.
Yeah.
Thanks,
mate. It's not so
listen, Lester was just an animal, mate. Just a tough young boy from the western suburbs. You know, I like his interviews when he's young. He had anger, he had fucking hate. He just fucking wanted to fight. He's just he just had that. What you need is a fighter. live alone, sleep, train hard, just live in a shoebox, mate. That was Lester. And I love the documentaries about him. Great hand speed, great body puncher. They called him the Master Blaster. Just everything you want in a fighter. Just an all-round, personality. As I said, I think he could have been one of the greatest fighters we've ever had. He already is, but the Barry Michaels mistake with the team, too young. He was the Prince of Melbourne. You keep cashing in on him, you build him up more. But I'm sure Mike Altamura, if he would have been in his corner back then, Lester Ellis would probably still be fighting. I think his career ended early.
Yeah.
But what he achieved was amazing anyway. I don't know about the IBO titles later on, but what he did to win the IBF title, defend it, then fight Barry Michaels was just amazing. As I said, I think he could have been better than what he was, which is scary, but he's still one of the greatest fighters we've ever had. Legend.
Yeah, 100%, mate, and I'm sure you agree, Pete. You look at these clips here, and you see how lightning fast he was on his feet and those hands, and he would give anyone's fit. And I still can't get over the fact that he was 19 turning 20 when he won that world title. And Tassie's right. If he had the right people behind him, do you think he could have gone on to even bigger and better things?
Yeah, look, he was exciting, wasn't he? And he was what Victorian boxing needed at the time, and Australian boxing, because I was starting at the same time with Jeff. I remember they both fought on the same night, and they were both world titles. So, yeah, it was good that time. It just seemed like a different lifetime away now from the way we do things now. But, yeah, getting back to their fight, it would have been it would have stopped Australia. Don't worry about Anthony Mundine and Danny Green. This would have been another level, I feel.
Mike, you obviously know Lester really well. What is his thoughts on the fight? Is it a fight that he wanted? And if it was, has he actually told you how he thinks the fight? Obviously, you think he would win, but have he actually confided in you anything about a Jeff Fenech fight?
Yeah, he was confident he would knock him out.
Is that right?
He was always... The other fights I've spoken to him about historically, and Lester said, they'll be tricky, they'll be hard. I don't know about that bloke. He's always been confident he would knock Jeff out. I don't know. Must have. I know that they'd had a few sparring sessions. They'd been in the gym a lot at the same times. He must have picked up on saying that he felt confident, and I'm sure Jeff would probably tell you the same. That's what made these guys great, is that confidence. But I think that what Lester always liked was guys that came to him. And I think that with Jeff, Lester would feel confident that Jeff would walk to his house. That's when he could be a little bit vulnerable, reaching, overshooting his shots, dropping his hands, after he jabbed, things like that. So I think that's maybe where he takes confidence.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Well, Tassie, just finally there, do you remember, the fights with One Kill You? I mean, that's probably the fight for me that really, I suppose started the Lester Ellis legend, I suppose, at the time, and then the Sequinin fight after that. They were just two fights that really set up his legacy, wasn't it?
No, 100%. Look, he's a legend, but we do got to both remember the first two titles Jeff and Lester won. The IBF wasn't really a major body back then too. Yeah. So both them belts are really big. I mean, there's more world titles than I've ever won, but I'm just saying back then they weren't really the cream of the cream.
Yeah.
Jeff went on to win WBC belts after that and the top where Lester didn't. So that's a big thing. But look, you can only do what you can do. He beat the Korean, then he beat a few good imports, and then he lost to the great Barry, which is no disrespect there because Barry is just an old fox. But going back to the IBF belt for both Jeff and him, they both fought pretty much not the best opposition, but Jeff did. And I'm going to talk about my pick later, the reason why. It's a lot about who they fought.
Yeah. All right, we might have lost Tassie there for a second. So let's just go back. Sorry, Tassie, we lost you there, mate. So sorry to cut you off. But let's get into it because, I mean, as I said at the start, this is such a fascinating fight. And even though I don't think, Mike, from memory, you never had Jeff as number one. I think you had Lionel Rose. The rest of us had had Jeff as undisputed number one pound for pound in Australian history, but we pretty sure most of us had Lester in there as well. But it's just such a tough fight, and it's probably, I think what he said before, it's definitely the fight that got away, because it just would have been, you know, the mundane, greenish type of build-up, I would think, especially, you know, for the real fight fans. So let's get into it first. Tassie, we're going to go to you. You're notoriously a Jeff Fenech man, but how do you see it going?
It's not just about being a Jeff Fenech man. I mean, like, you know, look, Lester, I've got so much respect for Lester Ellis. I grew up, you know, as I said, my dad's biggest influence in boxing, and Dad was a big Lester Ellis fan. You know, look, great fighter. As I said, he's got that fight over the docos I've watched. He slept, I think he slept in a little, I don't know if it was at the back of his parents or wherever, just in a little one better. He was hungry, up early, running the streets, the western suburbs. I love it. You got to be a true fighter. You got to hate the world. You got to hate everyone. That's my opinion. That's how I was anyway. Lester Ellis is
you still hate
a legend,
everyone,
mate. What?
You still hate everyone.
I do. I'm getting worse. I used to be a lot nicer. Anyway, back to the fight. Styles make fights, and I can see it as a massive argument for Lester. Quick, powerful, a natural super featherweight where Jeff started at bantamweight. So there's definitely an argument for Lester to win. But I've got to go with Jeff. The fact that Jeff's opponents he fought outdoes Lester. You know, the Mexicans he fought, you know, Zarate, Martinez, Villasana, all these legends, Daryl Zaragoza, who won a title 10 years later, beating Wayne McCulloch. Even though I talk about Jeff Moore as a feather super bantam, okay, let's talk about super feather. Who did he have a draw with and should have beat? Zuma Nelson.
Nelson, yeah.
I don't want to hear Zuma Nelson was sick or whatever. We know what Zuma Nelson done in the rematch, but Jeff won that fight, got robbed. It defined his fight because he wasn't the same after that. He's told me himself. Yeah. He's told a lot of people, but I spoke to him about it. So Zuma Nelson, Lester Ellis ain't no Zuma Nelson, and Barry Michaels ain't no Zuma Nelson. No disrespect to them, they're both friends of mine, especially Barry. Jeff's quality of opposition on the big stage outweighs Lester's. So I've got to go with Jeff Fenech. Even though I see an argument for Lester, I've got to stick with Jeff Fenech. I just can't see the opposition he faced and the way that he adjusted in fights. I can't go against Jeff, but awesome fight. Definitely an argument for Lester, but I've got my votes for Jeff Fenech on points.
Points, okay.
Unanimous decision.
Okay. How about you, Pete?
I see the fight starting off very fast. See Jeff trying to back Lester up. I see Lester landing some blistering hooks and moves. And by about the 7th or 8th round, I could see Fenech starting to edge. Is it a 12-round fight or 15-round
We'll
fight?
say 12.
Well, I see by about the 9th or 10th fight, Jeff's starting to get a bit more established and not charging in and being able to box and move away from a lot of Lester's shots and starting to score some points. And then I see Fenech winning on points in a very, very close, tough fight.
All right, Mike.
I think it's a firefight. Like I said earlier, I think that you match these guys 100 times, doesn't matter who you got winning. I think 100 times is going to be an outstanding fight. Their styles will just gel where neither guy liked holding inside. Neither guy liked holding when they were hurt. When they're hurt, they're holding, their legs are shaking, they're still trying to kill you. And that's what I admire about both of them. I feel, and I'm only going on gut instinct on this because Tassie's correct in everything he said. You look at career accomplishments, if you're measuring it by level of opposition, career accomplishments, everything, hands down, Fenech's your pick. On gut instinct, I think Lester squeaks out a decision. I think the hand speed gives Fenech fits. I think that Fenech walks right into Lester's wheelhouse. And Fenech would have to get through that first step, get past the jab, get through the hook, get past the counter hook to the body before he could go to work. Now, it's not beyond Jeff. Jeff mauled so many guys that were quote-unquote more talented than him by being more ferocious, hungrier, smarter, and Jeff knew how to cross-arm a little bit to get on the inside. What I do see with Jeff is a lot of his entries is very straight up. And I can just see Lester being able to pick him off and catch him enough to bank enough rounds to win the fight. But it's an outstanding fight. I think that it's a shame, look, again, it's one of those fights, if you remember, was it 95 when Lester had won those IBO titles, Fenech was on the comeback, Bill Morty offered $1 million, winner take all, and the fight never happened. It probably would have been a shame if it happened then because they were both post-prime. It's just a shame that we never saw the fight happen, period, because like you guys said, as great as Mundine and Green was, this would have been something wholly different.
Yeah, no, 100% agree, mate. Well, I agree with all of you in different ways. I think, Tazzy, I think you're right that that Lester wasn't, some of those Mexican fighters, the resumes of both of them, it's not even a contest. Jeff's is far superior than Lester's. But I also agree with Mike in that I don't think it would matter too much in this instance. I think even though Jeff really handled and bullied those Mexican fighters, those Mexican fighters aren't Lester. They didn't have the hand speed and the foot speed and even the punching power to some extent. So I think that Jeff would be facing something in Lester that he's never faced before, a different type of opponent. But having said that, I think Jeff would need to be very, very careful in the first 3 rounds. And I can't remember who said it before, but I agree that Jeff adjusted really well to his opponents. And I think he'd be aggressive but cautious in the first probably 3 or 4 rounds and just do enough just to maybe get a couple of those rounds, and he would start up in the pace. And I just think he would bank enough rounds, or especially come home a little bit later, where he would get a very, very razor-thin decision over Lester. I just think he would come home a little bit stronger and have a little bit too much strength for Lester in the end. But I've got to say, Mike, it's a hell of a lot better matchup for Jeff than what Barry McGuigan was. I think I've got that right. But I just think it would have been great for Australian boxing. I'm with you, Mike. I'm glad it didn't happen in 95. It would have been a bit of an injustice. It would have been a Danny Green, Anthony Mundine 2 situation, I think, and I don't think it would have proved anything. But I don't know about you guys, but the picture of them both, whether it be Festival Hall or the Hordern Pavilion or something in Sydney with a packed house, I'm probably being a bit parochial here by saying I'd love to see it at Festival Hall. It would have been unbelievable. Probably would have been too big for that, of course. It would have been at probably Melbourne Park or somewhere like that. But I can just see Jeff coming in super aggressive with those hands up, trying to dig to the body. Lester with those lightning fast combinations, hooking to the head and body. Just would have been a ripper fight. So to break it all down, I think that Jeff Fenech in a very, very close decision. Again, I just wish we had got to see it, but we'll have to, as it says there, dream about it, what could have been. But so I think that's 3 out of 4. I think we all sort of see it the same. It would have been very, very close either way, but we've gone for 3 out of 4 for Jeff Fenech over Lester Ellis, which I think is probably about where it would sit. So, but that's about it. That's dream fight for another week. Jeff Fenech gets the nod. Mike, it's up to you. You've had a couple of weeks off. You're up to the plate. Who you got?
I don't think I'm going to have as many complaints about this one.
Okay.
Going at lightweight, considering the weekend, at lightweight 140, but say lightweight, considering what we just seen on the weekend, going Terence Crawford versus Pernell Whitaker.
Ooh, wow, he's a really good one. At lightweight. I like that a lot.
Keep in mind, both guys won lightweight world titles, gone all the way up, been the recognised welterweight world champion. So you can pick your weight. You can go 135, you can go 140, 147.
Awesome.
I think that it's the same questions they're going to ask each other at every weight.
Yeah,
Well, they both were undisputed at lightweight. They both had all the belts at lightweight.
Oh, yeah, geez, that's a really, really good one. That's
Mike, what's your past fight?
Classic
as well?
fight.
Classic fight.
Classic fight. Corrales versus Castillo 1.
Oh, I've been waiting for that one. I was thinking about that the other day, actually, thinking who's going to bring that up at some stage.
Yeah.
That's my favourite all-time fight, so I figured why not.
Yeah, well, it features in the intro of this / Top Ranks intro. So,
Beautiful.
So, no, love the matchups, mate. Love both fights. So, really looking forward to that. So, the dream fight is Terence Crawford versus Pernell Whitaker. The classic fight is Corrales. So was it? Spell it, Castillo Corrales. Bit of a tongue tie. One. Okay. Great stuff, guys. Really appreciate it. Great to have you back, Mike. And yeah, we'll see you next week for Dream Fights.
Thanks, Leonard.
Thanks fellas.
Kaz.